doing this, I need to open the room right now because we have about 60 people waiting. So I will do that right now, okay? So have a wonderful panel. I'll see you later. I'll be on the whole time, but then I'm going to admit everyone in now. Admit all. Okay. Okay, everyone's coming in now.
Okay, with this.
Oh, I'm so glad we have everybody. Wonderful.
And fellows, we're
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so we're letting everyone in now.
Hi, Miss Unique.
Hi there, everybody. Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Loretta.
Hello,
Hi,
good afternoon.
everybody.
Janine here.
Good to see you all. Thank you so much for being here. It is 9 o'clock. Hi there.
we will mute.
Hi there. Okay, I just really want to get started because I really want to honor all your time. So thank you all so much for being here. So
Thank you for accepting.
of course, at this point, I'm going to mute all your mics, okay? I'm going to get started.
Okay.
Better.
Ang pelvic level, ang knee, ang ankle, ang feet.
All right. Hi there. A very good evening to everybody in Hawaii. Thank you for joining us on this Labor Day weekend. There are no more barbecues for us, but thank you for spending your Friday night with me. What are the odds of being able to spend Friday night together? Thank you for being here. And of course, a very, very happy weekend to all my friends in Europe. Good afternoon to all my pals in Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Philippines, Bhutan, my students in Japan, hello, and everyone else elsewhere in the world. Thank you for joining us. My name is Loretta, and I am part of the team that created Future Skills 101, a ground-up movement that initiates voluntary grassroots projects to empower communities of need in developing countries impacted by the pandemic. And with me is Eunice Ariola. Eunice, you want to just say hi and just wave to all of us? That's my co-conspirator, my co-founder, as well as my co-moderator for today's panel. And I also really wanted to take the opportunity to give a big shout out to my team who's all here today. Veronica, can you just wave to all of us? Hi, Veronica. We also have Wei Han, who's somewhere around. And we also have Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, so thank you all so much. Over to you, Eunice. Eunice, you got to unmute yourself. Over to you, Eunice. You need to unmute your mic.
Thank you, Loretta, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us in Future Skills 101. Future Skills 101 seeks to develop resilient communities by providing free education, open source resources, as well as current thought leadership from industry players, change makers, and altruistic individuals like yourself who believe in contributing to a greater good.
That's right. In the meantime, I also just like to let all of you know that we'll be recording this, and that's just only for our own references. So Eunice, if you could just hit record for me, that would be great. Thank you. Now, in the short time that we started Future Skills 101, we have had an outpouring of support, and in particular, the panels have been very, very popular. So we hope to be able to do more of this for you. Our webinar today will be 90 minutes long, and unlike traditional conferences that can be rather formal, shall we say, pets are highly encouraged. I have 10 myself, so you may see them around. Footwear is completely unnecessary. I have none on, and you can most certainly BYOB. And please feel free to also submit any questions or comments you may have during the presentation into the chat room, or you can also raise them at the end of our panel. And for those of you who wish to remain in the Zoom room to discuss ideas, please go ahead as well, as we'll be most happy to have a conversation with you after our official closing remarks. And at this time, as we'd like to formally begin, could we all please ensure that our mics are turned off to mute? And if you'd like to please leave your names on the Zoom screen so that we can enable a conversation with you during the Q&A. Over to you, Eunice.
Since it has made its entry on the world stage, COVID-19 has dramatically torn up the existing script of normalcy as we know it. It has brought about monumental change in geopolitical relations, society, business, and life at every level. In today's panel, we wish to create a dialogue across geographical boundaries with global leaders and change makers to find out what they make out of this VUCA future ahead in sustainability, particularly in the realm of education, finance, and food, which are all essentials to life.
That's right. Our panelists today come from Singapore, Bhutan, and Switzerland. All small countries, but they have all made big waves in their success stories in sustainability, resource allocation, and resilience. And when Bhutan became a democracy, she actually looked to her little red dot sister in the equator as a role model. And in her own infancy, Singapore actually modeled herself after Switzerland. So you can say there is much that unites our three countries together. So we are very thankful that our panelists today function as a symbolic figures, bringing our countries together in one Zoom room.
Our panelists are esteemed panelists in alphabetical order. First, Mr. Peter Huber. He is the Chief Executive Officer for Zurich International since 2017 and leads Zurich's overall international business, which brings together the current international life business in the Isle of Man, the Middle East, and Zurich International Corporate Solutions, including Zurich Eurolife based in Luxembourg. He joined Zurich in 2013 as Chief Executive Officer for Zurich Global Life Singapore, and from 2015, he was President, Director, and CEO of Zurich Topaz Life Indonesia. Peter has over 20 years of industry experience in Europe and Asia and joined Zurich from Swiss Reinsurance Company Limited, where he was Managing Director in the Reinsurance Division based in Switzerland. Prior to that, he was Regional General Manager for Life and Health for Allianz Southeast Asia Pacific, which is based in Singapore. Peter has a master's degree in commercial law from University of St. Gallen in Switzerland, my co-alumnus here, and as well as a master's degree in finance from the London Business School. In 2005, he attended the Advanced Management Program at the Harvard Business School.
And as the CEO and Managing Director of 6 companies and counting, I'm sure, Food Services, Grosses, Logistics, PotX, X, and X Inc., Nichol is responsible for sales, marketing, customer service, human resource, finance, business development, and everything else in between. She oversees over 190 employees, 5,000 customers, 4,000 SKUs, and has an annual turnover of over 65 million Sing dollars. Nichol takes a hands-on approach to running the business while grooming a team of mid-management leaders. She innovates to lead the way for her peers in the wholesale trade by experimenting with various tech and payment solutions, new alternatives, collaborations, and any ideas that can help the industry progress. Her biggest aspiration is to be the most influential food service player in Asia, and she opened her new home space in December 2019. Nichol also established a food bank, Singapore, in 2012, a charity that redistributes excess food to more than 360 non-profit organizations, reaching out to over 200,000 underprivileged. She's also the current president of One Singapore, whose mission is to make poverty history by raising awareness about poverty issues in Singapore. Nichol is married and a mother of 4. I don't know how she does all this, but she does. And she makes time for our panels. Thank you so much, Nichol.
And the third one is Professor Thakur S. Powdyel, who is an educator by choice, conviction, and passion. As the country's first democratically elected Minister of Education, he moved Bhutan towards fulfilling the Millennium Development Goals and the country's constitutional mandate for education. His major interests include institutional integrity, national self-respect, moral literacy, and gross national happiness. Professor Powdyel's vision of holistic education, as expressed in his book, My Green School, has been translated into several languages around the world. His other books include As I Am, So Is My Nation, Right of Vision, Educational Views, Gyal Kabar, Reflections on State, Citizen and Citizenship Education, and The Light of My Life. He is the recipient of the International Gusi Peace Prize, the Global Education Award, and the Distinguished Service Award for his pioneering work in education, as well as the Coronation Gold Medal in 2008, and the Institutional Award, the Honor of Druk Tuksi in 2012. He has also invested his public office with the rare quality of integrity, service, and selflessness in the evolving Bhutanese democratic landscape in honor of his country and fellow citizens. Professor Powdyel has been described, and I quote, the most widely foot-traveled education minister in the world.
Wow. And without further ado, I really would like to start with you, Professor Powdyel. Thank you so much. I just always wish that we had more global leaders as humble as you. Thank you for spending the day with us. Thank you so much. So I want to start with you, Professor. Sir, can you hear me? Let's see. Sir, do you have your mic? Yeah. Hi. Professor Powdyel? Let's see, Professor? Professor, can you turn your mic on? Hello? Let's see, Professor's there, let's check. Professor, can we just turn your mic on?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi. Hi, sir. Okay.
We have
that's okay.
the internet here, so I apologize
No
for
problem.
any hiccup there might be. So anyway, thank you so much for inviting me to join this very special circle. I would like to wish you Tashi Dele and Kuzangpo, aloha and good afternoon.
Tashidelek and Kuzuzompo, sir. So let's start with you. First off, could you just let us know, what's happening right now in Bhutan? How has lockdown been for you, sir?
Yes, we have this lockdown experience for the last 3 weeks now getting extended. We haven't had any fatalities, fortunately, so far. And the few internal transmissions that we've had have been under control. His Majesty the King himself has been leading the national initiative to control the spread of the virus. So everybody has come together now. It's a very, in fact, a special at a certain level, in the sense that Bhutan has come together as a family under the leadership of His Majesty and the government. So we have, in a way, been able to manage to control the virus quite effectively, and we hope that this will be the case even in the future. But we're very worried about what's happening around the neighborhood as well as beyond in the world. So far, things have been under very good control, but we are not taking any chances. We have no illusion about the challenges. So we have our guards still intact.
That's a perfect segue for the next question that I have for you. Namge Zam, who was on our panel 2 weeks ago, she actually expressed that the people are so much more trusting of the government than of media. And the Edelman Trust Barometer just came out with a study, the Trust Study of 2020. China actually tops their study in terms of people's trust in their governance. The US, by contrast, is in the reds, literally. People are completely distrusting of the US government. How do you think your government has been able to elicit so much trust from your people?
I think we owe this trust to the institution of monarchy in the country. We have been blessed with enlightened monarchy, the leadership of succeeding generations of our kings. So unlike in many parts of the world, in Bhutan, the institution of the monarchy is deeply revered. And our kings have been great role models for the people. And 2008 saw the advent of democracy, but even democracy has actually imbibed a lot of the positive spirit of the institution of monarchy. So people look up to His Majesty the King as the repository of our strength, our unity, our national cohesion, and the government derives its inspiration from their majesties, the kings, the members, the royal family. So Bhutan is actually a very special case in point.
It really is. And I was so touched, that I read the news. And sometimes when I'm having a bad day, I'll just go read the news, the Bhutanese papers. And I saw that your king actually instituted for a program to feed the dogs. And he said no one will go hungry in Bhutan, even the stray dogs. So we have a program now to feed the stray dogs. So, it just really makes my day. But on this note, in your capacity as the former Minister for Education, we have a lot of higher education professionals with us today. What do you see, sir? What do you think is the future of education now that we are in a pandemic world? What do you think will be the future of education?
As an educator, as a teacher, I believe that education is based on the principle of hope. It is based on the principle of possibility. Things may not look all that pleasant or cheerful at the moment, but we hope that they will improve and get better, Ashik. And that the world becomes a little more humble, a little more listening, and a little more sensitive. We'll be able to organize our education systems around the world in a way that addresses the core claims on education and education systems around the world. So far, there's so much of talk going on all around the world, but not all of it is education in the real sense of the term. So much has been going on in the name of education. However, today's education is mostly mentalistic, highly intellectual, and it leaves out a lot of the important claims on education systems and on educational practitioners. So I hope that in the future, to sustain the future for the sustainability of the human race in our life indeed, and that of the planet Earth, we will look at education from a much more holistic perspective, from a much more sustainable perspective. Education was once upon a time called the noble sector. The noble sector. No other sector of public service has ever been called the noble sector, not even health, but education was called the noble sector, and for very good reasons. Education is meant to help young people, men and women, boys and girls, to cultivate the nobility of their mind, to cultivate the nobility of their heart, thereby leading to the cultivation of the nobility of their hands. So when the head and the heart and the hands are brought together on the principle of nobility, we believe that the result, the outcome will be positive and noble. So we have to look at education from a much more holistic and a sustainable, respectful and respectable perspective. I am very hopeful that we will be able to cross over to the sunnier side of the street once the pandemic is over.
So I don't know if you can tell, but it's the reason why I never wear mascara, because I tear very easily, and your words have moved me and have reaffirmed why I became an educator and why I always truly believe in education, because I truly believe that it is a noble thing. And having taught in for-profit universities, sometimes it can sometimes make me quite disillusioned, and hearing your words just reaffirms why I do what I do. So thank you. You are a huge proponent for gross national happiness. And in your work in green schools and sustainability and gross national happiness, you have often said that you want us to move away from an ego system, the GDP system, to an ecosystem, which is exactly what you talked about, sustainability, values. And you have also mused and authored your perspectives on the pandemic. Could you please share with us your ideas on Revolution 5.0, the return of the human? We need to hear this. Sir? Sir, are you there? Limpo?
I think he's frozen.
Yeah, it could also be because we're all the way in the Himalayas. I mean, well, we're out in the Pacific and there's in the Himalayas. One of the perils of zooming across the distance. It's like a cliffhanger. We need to hear those words.
Yes.
Well, hopefully, well, I know it's like, ta-da, well, to be continued. So, well, in the meantime, well, we did this for a reason. It's a bit of a cliffhanger, so you guys can't leave until you hear Limpo's comments on, you know, the return of the human. So yeah, it's about time we need some humanity and less technology. So on that note, let's bring on Nichol. Nichol, you are the biggest food distributor in Singapore. Can you just share with us, how has the pandemic impacted your business, your supply chain, and overall outlook?
Singapore is a tiny little island. And for those of you who do not know, we import 92% of everything that we consume in this tiny island. But sad to say, we also throw away more than 30% of everything that we import. So that's billions and billions of dollars that's being thrown away. To start off the answer on this note, we'll give you the perspective. I think firstly, a lot of us living in Singapore don't realize how lucky we are, because we are ranked #1 in terms of food security in the entire world. So how can an island like that, you know, be able to be food sustainable in that sense, you know, with such a high food security ranking? And back to Loretta's question about how COVID-19 or this pandemic has panned out, I think it has brought us to realize and to start questioning where our source of food actually comes from. Because, and I think it all stems from the fact, I don't know how many of you know, but we're very closely associated with Malaysia. So the moment they said that the borders are closed from Malaysia, there was an entire panic mode in Singapore. And basically we escalated into panic buying when that time happened. And it was shortly before the announcement of our circuit breaker, which is our version of the slightly more relaxed lockdown. So I think this is the first time in modern history where all of us experienced this. My business, of course, was affected because I serve a lot of airlines. I serve all the hotels. My saving grace would be that my clientele base is very diversified. So I've got anybody from your hawkers, your bakeries, you know, all the way down to your cafes. So people still need to eat. But the reality is, and from the insider's view, and I'll share that with you in case you didn't know, cost of food is going to go up because there is going to be a global shortage of food. And I will leave it as that because, so firstly, the entire world has been in lockdown at various stages, and all of us prepare, manufacture, harvest products at different stages over the 12 months, right, in a calendar year. So imagine China goes into lockdown, and then you've got Thailand going to lockdown, and then so the farmers don't go out to farm, the factories are not open. So what happens is when all these pockets of lockdown start happening, there is a disruption in the supply chain. And Singapore is one of the first countries to experience this because with the geopolitics that's really happening right now, everyone is very inward looking. So I've got plenty of exporters or suppliers that I used to buy from Italy, from Asia. They say, oh, I can't export anymore because I have to stock my own shelves. That means I have to be more inward looking. So for any one of us that thinks that politics doesn't play a role in whether there is going to be food in this world, I'm telling you now that it is. So at least in Hawaii, you know, you've got food source there, you know, but in Singapore, it's going to be a struggle. And I'll just put it as that. And to me, my biggest concern is not whether I can earn the revenue and all that. I have seen it firsthand for myself that the number of people that's struggling to even make ends meet has just kind of escalated over the last 3 months. And for a tiny island like Singapore, this is really, really worrying. Yeah.
You know, while, you know, I know that we have actually some of our, you know, change makers and leaders in Hawaii who actually tuned in because they really are interested in this notion of sustainability. So I want to pose this question to you. You know, you are Singapore's biggest food distributor, and the New York Times yesterday reported that, and I quote, "A shadow of hunger looms over the United States. About 1 in 8 families will not have enough to eat." And to put this in perspective, for those of us who have children, Feeding America says today that 1 in 4 children will not know where their next meal will come from. This is in America. And of course, I'm not asking you to comment on America, but as the biggest food player in Singapore, we know that the pandemic has exacerbated fears of food insecurity. Can you share with us, and for the benefit of some of our Hawaiian leaders listening in, can you share with us what are some of Singapore's strategies and what are your own ideas on food sustainability?
I think just to correct Loretta a little bit, I am not the largest food distributor, but maybe I'm the biggest hearted. I would say that. But I must correct as well.
Okay, Nicole.
Even better. Yeah, and that's why I'm on this panel to share my thoughts.
Yeah, I didn't get the other one, that's why.
So we have been in business since 1939, and with 80 odd years of experience, I think we have valid experiences to share. Yeah, so we have been around longer than Singapore has been, right? So firstly, I think Singapore has been, we have a great government, at least in my view. I think we've done a lot of things right. And I know there are a lot of complaints from the Western world about, Singapore being very muted, we can't publicize this and things like that. But I think you have to remember that Singapore is a very young nation. So we have spent the first 30 to 40 years of our independence just ensuring that everyone has a roof over our heads, we have enough food to eat, and now being number one in food security, that has shown a lot in our strategy and how we have played the politics out. So I know what the Singapore government has done is that firstly, we've started buying farmland in other countries. So we have been growing food in other people's land that is actually owned by us. It's just that we don't know where it is. Secondly, and very confidentially speaking,
just among the 100 people here, yes.
Yes, exactly. I'll have to kill you if you spread
whatever
this out.
happens in a Zoom room stays in a Zoom room, okay?
Yeah. Yes, but we for many years now, in fact, as part of our national defense, Singapore has already started stockpiling of food products as another way of securing the nation in case there is a lockdown, in case there's whether it's a food security, food safety breach. So in warehouses around Singapore where we don't know where it is, and I heard, Loretta, there's even stockpiles of toilet paper somewhere in Singapore right now. So, but the government has really planned ahead, and it's beyond what we have seen from the outside. And the other thing also is, I think we always feel this sense of safe. We feel very safe consuming anything in Singapore because it goes through a lot of rigorous testing. But for some of you who do not know or have not traveled to Singapore before, I always say that Singaporeans are too pampered because we always have very cheap food. So let's not talk about the Michelin star restaurants or what have you, right? Or the $50 burgers, okay? I'm talking about a hot meal that you can still get at a neighborhood coffee shop for $3 Singapore dollars, which is $2+ US dollars. I think in the US, you probably get a watered down coffee and half a donut. I don't even know whether you get that. But in Singapore, you can get a hot bowl of noodles, clean noodles, still good to eat, and some would say even better than other restaurant grade noodles, at $2 to $3.
And we also have $2 Michelin star chicken rice.
Exactly. And sometimes we have taken that for granted because for so many years, we just feel that no matter where we go, food is everywhere and is readily available. And the other thing also is, I think, something that we've done really right, which is quite different from the US, from what I understand through our global food banking partners as well, is that when we map out urbanization in terms of households, so I think, if I'm not wrong, is every 10,000 people that stays in a cluster, whether in the public housing, there will always be a clinic, a market, a coffee shop, a cafe. So food is never too far away, or any of your utilities or anything that you require. You may just need to walk like 500 meters to your nearest doctor or something like that. So, but this is something that is behind the scenes that people just take it for granted. But in fact, all of us know we do not need to walk very far to grab food. But this is not the case in a very large country like the US, which is why there is hunger, because there's people that it's not accessible. So even if there's a closest food bank or a food pantry somewhere, it might be kilometers away. So it's not exactly accessible. Yeah, so but I think these are some of the strategies that we have done behind the scenes that has, brought us to where we are today. It's not perfect. I agree that there's plenty more that we can actually still improve on, but these are some of the things that we have done.
So you are also saying that there's obviously the hand of the government and private and public partnerships, right? In that way. And just moving on from public-private partnerships, what is the role of community? And more specifically, I'm pivoting to the work that you do in the food bank as a charity. Can you shed light for us on the plight of the urban poor in Singapore, and how has the food bank been helping in the pandemic? And I know that you have a presentation to share, right? So I think you are enabled to share it. If you want to, you can go ahead and share the presentation, or do you want me to share it?
I can share it. Yep.
Okay.
No problem. Can you see it? I just,
Yes.
yeah. So this specific deck, it's actually
You
about...
can hit, Nicole, you can hit slideshow so that it'll be bigger. If you hit slideshow, then we can see it bigger. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so basically just a few short snapshots on what the food bank does. So a little bit, I'll take a minute. How did we decide to start the food bank? So firstly, Loretta, I'm not sure if I shared this story with you, but I nearly could not register the name, the Food Bank Singapore, because the government said, oh, there's no more banking license in Singapore. This is the exact words that came from the... So that was in 2012. And I remember that so clearly. That's how little Singapore knew about exactly what food banking meant. And you know, versus in the US, for example, where food banking is an institution already, you know, it's just another non-profit business by itself since 1950s, right? We did not know what food banking was. And the other struggle was that as an NGO, you know, is this something that we are supposed to do, or is it something the government is supposed to look after? You know, in Singapore, we've got this huge retailer called NTUC FairPrice, right? And a lot of Singaporeans felt that NTUC's role was to be able to feed everybody. So that was the struggle that my brother and I had before we started the food bank. But still,
can you just, for the sake of some of our international audiences here, can you just explain just briefly what the NTUC FairPrice is?
Okay, so the NTUC FairPrice is like your Walmart. It's like your Walmart in the US. Yeah, or your Tesco's, for example. So it's in that similar fashion. The difference is that it's not exactly for profit. It's ran by a co-op. Yeah, so they have the responsibility to ensure, I think, the top 100 items of essentials to be kept flat price. Yeah, so that's the other hand of the government, if you will. But anyway, so we decided that, hey, you know, being a 80-year-old company, or, you know, with history, let's do something for, you know, to bring our business partners and peers to not throw away their items, but to really redistribute or donate out their items. So this is what we do. We're part of the Global Food Banking Network. We are the only charity in Singapore, I can honestly tell you, that has set ourselves a target to put ourselves out of business. So my mission is to end food insecurity in Singapore. Because my notion is, if you're an NGO or a ground-up initiative to establish a certain mission or a cause, you should get to a goal. So what's the point of just raising money to fatten your P&Ls, right? Okay, so that's my philosophy, but no gala dinners and no nonsense like that. So, but it's just really to end food insecurity in Singapore. If there's any country in the world that can do this, it's Singapore. I can honestly tell you, because we are so small, we can go anywhere in 45 minutes. So, yeah. So we actually serve more than 360 charity organizations. The thing that Singapore does not have is a minimum wage, which we are fighting for right now, right? There's this whole debate. And there's no poverty line. So when you do not have these two very obvious things, usually for a first world country, it's very hard for you to define actually who's in need. Yeah, so who falls above and below the line, right? So anyway, we actually serve more than 360 charities. As long as you're an NGO with a food program, we would actually be able to serve you. So we do not actually go door to door. Yeah, we actually work through all these charity organizations. And then back to your question, Loretta, about how does, you know, a lot of the expats that stays in Singapore, are you very sure Singapore needs a food bank? I don't see any homeless folks, you know, under the blocks or whatever. But yes, so because of that question, I actually have spent $250,000 with the SMU University at the N Center, and we came up with Singapore's first food insecurity report. And so it's not live yet. We are actually releasing it to the media on the 16th of September. That is Singapore's first food insecurity report. And these are why I'm so excited, because these are pre-COVID numbers, and we are already looking at 1 in 10. I can honestly tell you, over the last 3 months, the number is probably 1 in 7 or 1 in 8. Yeah, and if you do your calculator math right now, minimally we are looking at 500,000 to 700,000 people on this tiny island that probably cannot feed themselves throughout the entire month. And it's staggering, right? Because these people live in, I have delivered food to landed properties. So in Singapore, most of us stay in a condominium or a HDB flat. So, you know, we have got very, very nice public housing. So a lot of us stay in those public housing. So, but, you know, even people who can afford landed property or staying in landed property or private condominiums, a lot of them are reaching out for help. So something is going on right here. So we actually collect non-perishable items. As long as there's 5 days of shelf life, we'll be able to pick it up, and then we actually redistribute them. And we also do perishable items, like you see the cakes with creams, you know, that palette is from a very big e-commerce retailer in Singapore. Every day there's chickens, there's ham, there's whipping cream, milks, yogurts, whatever. And we also do cooked food rescue. So cooked food, basically, those trays are actually for Marina Bay Sands. So it's not front of house, it's what you salvage back of house. It's like you prepare, you know, when they used to have conventions and events, they will prepare for 1,000 packs, but only 900 people turn up. They will actually donate the rest of the food. So we actually salvage all these foods. And it's very interesting that from 2012 till now, we have seen the variety of food basically expand out. So Nando's is a donor of ours. So we're also in talks with people like KFC. So every hour they throw away a few kilos of chicken into the plastic bags. So there's a lot of food wastage happening in the supply chain due to quality checks. And because of our close association within the F&B, I can honestly tell you, there's a lot more food that can be salvaged. So from the sustainable environment angle, the food bank also has that role to carry. Just on the side track, last 2 weeks ago, we actually received 5,000 coconuts. So someone actually donated 5,000 coconuts. Like they were supposed to ship it somewhere else, but obviously, you know, that business was down the drain. And actually, there were beneficiaries that wanted the coconuts. I was like, who in the world wants coconuts? It's those green coconuts that you poke and you drink with the Hawaiian straw and all that kind of thing. And you know, so but we actually gave those 5,000 coconuts out. But it's very interesting.
Yes.
We also have fresh food, so we actually collect all the perishables, you know, ugly fruits and vegetables. Singapore is very lucky again. We have cheap vegetables from everywhere, Malaysia, from China as well. And I've been receiving a lot of capsicums. So the #1 most hated vegetable in Singapore is actually capsicums. So please don't do any more business with capsicums. I receive a lot of capsicums every time, and nobody eats them. Okay, yeah. So we have a lot of volunteering of yours, of course. Actually, Tango Tab, it's an app from the US. One of the millionaires in the US. So about 5 years ago, he decided to start Tango Tab. Tango Tab is a very interesting app because he engages the restaurants where whenever, let's say, you know, if Loretta dines in a steakhouse, you know, she dines there, she checks in onto Tango Tab, someone in the community gets fed. So it's a pay it forward concept. Yeah, so in Singapore, we wanted to start something here before COVID hit. And basically, Food Bank would be the charity of choice. So this deck is about how we are digitizing food banking to keep it sustainable. The other thing that we also did, which may be interesting for the rest of the countries listening in, I think we are one of the first charities in the world to do this. We are distributing food aid via vending machines. So you see the bank card on the side, there's no money inside. So basically, there's food credits. And the reason why we started these nice looking high-tech vending machines is because a lot of times when you go and collect food from a food bank or a pantry or a family service center, as we call it here, is during office hours. But as you know, and all of us are human beings, if you're hungry and there's no food in your cupboard, it's 24/7 problem. It doesn't mean at 12 midnight, you're supposed to keep your stomach quiet, right? So what we did was we are going to roll out at least about 100 machines by next year. So by end of the year, for sure, there's 40 to 50 machines. And it's not just dried rations. We are also going to have cooked food being dispensed in the machines as well. So it's cooked food, frozen, and then you can heat it up in the microwave anytime that's hanging at the side, 24/7. So you basically can get your hot meal any time of day. So this is something that we've done. I also wanted to share, because this is happening during very unique pandemic times. We did something different, which is Feed the City, and we called it a takeaway edition. So this is one example of what I did as an F&B hospitality business player, as well as an NGO player as well. I married the two together. So I basically raised funds and donations. Instead of getting some kind of a soup kitchen to cook the food, I paid restaurants to cook it. So the idea, the initial goal was 10,000 meals during the 8 weeks of lockdown. So if I can share with you, in those few weeks, we actually distributed 650,000 meals. And we just ended our program in totality as of end of August. We gave out 1 million meals as of from 1st April to now. So what we did was we got the donations, we supported the restaurants at a fixed rate, and then we bought the meals from them and we redistributed to everybody. And then, you know, some people are asking, you know, like food, you know, how important it is, you know, it doesn't have to be expensive. And it's back to the question that Loretta asked me just a few days ago, you know, what does food really means? For every one of us, as we know, food is just as important to nourish the soul and our emotions as much as it is for our tummies, right? So when you're not happy or when you're PMSing or something like that, after a bad day, you just want a chocolate bar or you just want to have that ice sweet bubble tea or something like that to make yourself happy, or I want a cocktail, you know, and food is the same even for those in need. So what happened was when we gave them restaurant food, oh my God, everyone was so happy. They were saying, oh my goodness, over the last many years that I've been receiving free food, I've never eaten such food before. We gave them things like fish and chips, you know, we gave them gourmet burgers, you know, and everyone was just so happy. So we realized it was very impactful. So the impact was definitely beyond just 1 million meals, but also the emotional things as well. We used a lot of Google Maps in order to map out the needs, because in the charity business, there's plenty of duplicates as well. Back to your question about where does NGO role plays, right, in this entire ecosystem. We are heartened to say that while I think nowadays, I mean, it's the same everywhere in the world, there are a lot of ground-up initiatives. But the problem with ground-up initiatives, if they are not done appropriately, so like I give you a very real example. So recently, Singapore has been getting a lot of backlash because of how we treat the migrant workers and all that. So a lot of people stepped up to buy food for these migrant workers. Okay, but they bought Chinese food, and there was photos online showing thousands and thousands of packets of Chinese food that was thrown away. So one word out there is that yes, we are very heartened, plenty of ground-up initiatives, but I think work needs to be done or research needs to be done before you go out to help or take other people's money to go and buy something else to help as well. So, but that's just sharing. We have implemented a good warehouse system in order to track our shelf life, because we do anything from 3 days of shelf life as well. In Singapore, we're very lucky because it's a non-profit platform. It's called giving.sg. And when circuit breaker hit, they decided to waive all fees. So a lot of millions of dollars have been coming through giving.sg at no fees. Even the credit card fees are absorbed by them. So this has made donations much easier, and everything is very transparent as well. Yeah, and we're going to launch the virtual food banking app. We had some blessings from a DBS bank. And so what happened is, this is like, imagine it's a Tinder for food donations. So if Eunice has 2 baskets of apples in her restaurant that she wants to donate, and then there's a household maybe 1 kilometer away, and they are under this family service center or some community center, the community center can actually bid for those 2 bundles of apples, and then it can be matchmade in real time. So what's happening is we are bringing donations as quickly as possible to those in need, to cut it out as well. And in between, we're hoping that someone like a Uber or a Grab can adopt that trip. So that's how technology is going to be playing throughout what we are doing. And just to give you some perspective, in 2012, when we first started, we redistributed 2 tons of food. In 2019, we distributed 802 tons of food, but just during circuit breaker of that 7 weeks, it's 560 tons. Yeah, and I think we still have a long way to go, but that's just to give you a snapshot of what we have done so far. But thank you for the time, Loretta.
You know, Nicole, we're definitely going to have you to come back again, because, you know, I think that there's so many strategies that you've shared that I think, you know, we've brainstormed and talked about, but you've actually managed to implement it. And I actually think that you are actually not unfortunately, your dream's not going to come true, the food bank, because I think we're going to need a lot of your work and what you do. But I think there's so many takeaways, the digitization, the making it here and now for people who really need the food with the vending machines, right? Making accessible with the apps, right? It really is the coming together. And even when you give, it's to do the research first. It's not just blindly giving, but to really see what is really needed, because it's all about sustainability. And what I really particularly appreciated was the fact that understanding that hotels and F&Bs now are in need, you are now reaching out to help them as well. You're helping them to help others. And in turn, it really is about a real ecosystem that we're creating. So thank you so much for that. And on that note, I would now like to speak to Mr. Peter Huber. Good morning, sir. Good morning.
Good morning. How are
Good
you?
morning. Thank you so much for joining us all the way in Spain. I know people are, well, how is the rain in Spain? Tell us how you're doing in Spain. I think I'm sure some are confused, but Peter Huber is the CEO of Zurich International, but he is currently in Spain. So tell us how it's like for you in Spain right now, Peter.
It's very good. It's the end of the summer, and so it's always the best time of the year. I've been here since May, confining myself, given that obviously we went into lockdown in March, and we, as a group, have instilled a very strict travel ban, so I decided to camp here, given that I'm half Spanish as well, which wasn't disclosed at the introduction so much. Like Nichol, is very confidential, right? Just 100 people listening. So I think it's interesting, right? Because obviously Spain has been hit very hard. I've been here since May. I'm south of Barcelona, and the two cities, Madrid and Barcelona, have been hit very hard. And cases have creeped up again, but I think, as with everything, we know what to do. So you know how to protect, yeah? So from that side, I don't feel unsafe at all. I do stay away from people, obviously, which I think it's fair. I don't go into closed places for too long. So all the things we have heard and learned, I think if you apply them, if you can apply them, okay, I think it's fair to say that I have the possibilities to apply them. I don't need to go into public transport and things like that. So I think things are okay for me, but things are creeping up. You see lots of people losing the discipline when it comes to applying some of the things we have learned the very hard way, and that's actually quite disappointing to see. And I think we have a duty to remind everyone to keep the distance, and I do this every day. And actually it's interesting if people don't look at you badly. I think if you remind them, say, listen, you remember what happened a few weeks or months ago, and we had some of the people that have built this great nation die, because I think that's what happened. We've seen the elderly predominantly die, and also health workers here in Spain. So I think if you point them out and point them to their social duty, I think you get positive reactions. And I think if we all do it twice a day, I think we'll have a reproduction rate which is very big and positive for that, because I think we all will be helping each and everyone. I think that's important. So
Well,
I just wanted to say one thing, Loretta, quickly. I think Switzerland has also working poor, which I think is what you're getting to, Nichol, in many ways. And I think that's the biggest problem. People working hard every day, but not having enough at the end of the month to support their families or you be it. And I think while food in Singapore is cheap, I think Switzerland doesn't have the same situation. It's getting better, but I think it's a problem. The other thing is, I think it's food and education is very much linked. Kids have not been able to go to school for 6 months, and many families depend on their kids being fed in the schools. When that drops out, I think that becomes a big problem. That's why I think we've seen the schools maintain that system and still serving food for many kids. And I think that's something that we've seen in Spain in particular. And I think the last point is, without wanting to go into politics, this is a health crisis, and I think it's just a shame to see politicians abuse the health crisis for political campaigning. And I hope there will be people will realize that and will eventually make their vote heard and make a change. By the way, I forgot to say these are all my personal opinions. I was told that I'm not representing.
That is Peter Huber. But But thank you
Yes.
so much for saying this, Peter. I think we need to hear it with an international crowd here. I also know we have our friends here from the United States, you know, and
Yes.
there's a reason why I have Professor Powdyel, Nichol, and you together in one Zoom room, because not only are you my friends and my esteemed, you know, friends, but you are all wise and compassionate and kind and smart, and it can go together. You don't just have the one or the other. You can't be a kind leader. I think that's so important. Now, let's jump right in. You have 55,000 employees globally, you know, so, and this whole concept of the office, the notion of work, the insurance industry, you know, it has been completely reconfigured. And I know we don't have enough time to go into great detail, all aspects that have been changed in your business, but I also know that you have actually taken the time to prep a presentation for us. So do you want to go ahead and enable that screen share? And while you
I'll
do that,
try.
yeah,
I shall try.
yep, go ahead and enable that screen share. And if you can't, I can do that as well. And while you do that, I'll just let the audience know that the presentation is going to be on the future of sustainability, particularly on the notion of insurance, consumer behavior, and business. And I know there are a lot of business leaders and business students as well, and change makers and leaders out there. So you really want to pay attention to this one. And I'm also supposed to say that I can't share this presentation, so you're listening to confidential information that will only be shared here in the Zoom room.
Yeah.
Okay, Peter, over to you, sir.
Usually when the insurance guy comes and talks, everyone leaves. So I hope
Right, that's true. I see them all. They've pinned their photo. They've all gone off, you know, to get their photos.
exactly.
It's just their photos.
It's,
It's just me.
We're still
it's
here.
actually quite okay when you don't want to talk to people, just say work in insurance. Then actually it's a magic. It's a good trick. It's a party trick. So I recommend to use it. Anyway, so I think I'm given time. I think we should have more time for Q&A and discussion. So I'm going to be fairly quick, and so we have more time for conversation, which I think is what the value comes out of.
That is so rare, a man that doesn't want to hog the time. No, I'm kidding. You know I love you. Go ahead, Peter.
I could spend the rest of the half an hour talking. So. I think what have we seen? I think one area is we label is the amplification of risks, and what do I mean by that? So firstly, I think about mobility. I think obviously we have seen a big impact on travel. I mean, travel did disappear overnight and is creeping back slowly, and people are very scared. That obviously has changed the whole landscape. I think what we've seen is a shift in travel for passenger travel to more cargo travel. I think that's something that we've seen, and some of the airlines have been managing this better than others. But the fallouts of travel are still unknown, and actually we will not see what happens going forward. On the other hand side, we've seen an increase, or we expect an increase in individual travel, people avoiding public transport and going back to the cars, which is obviously something that we didn't expect to happen, because we thought, okay, connected cars, sharing of cars, and all of it will be the future. So I think we have to reassess how this is going to look like going forward. Obviously health, I think the notion of health with the pandemic has increased dramatically. Being away at home, how do you keep fit, how do you keep well mentally, and all of this spiritually, socially, I think has changed in many ways. On the other hand, we have seen lots of people developing very bad habits. If you talk to GPs, you will see people coming with very high cholesterol levels after this confinement. They've just been sitting at home in front of the TV and not looking after themselves. So here really we have seen both ways. I think the other thing we've seen is people are happy to share their health data and collaborate with that. And I think that's something we've seen. I think getting more health data will help us to find better solution. And I think that's going to be an interesting one. Next one, connected living. That's what we're doing here, by the way. I think we all connected through Zoom, which is no more than really Amazon that is helping us to stay all connected, because Zoom is backed by Amazon Web Service, which is amazing of how they were able to pick it up. But think about it, homes, everyone working from home, having their Zooms, their WebEx, their Teams, you name it. I mean, they're getting lost with all those tools. And I think that's really helping everyone to just to continue. And it's not that it's throughout ages. If you have kids, you will see that kids are doing the schooling on these systems. When they play, they have some kind of chat application in the background, and then they play together. And we'll have to see how that continues, how the whole notion of working from home continues. We did go. I think as of today, out of the 55,000 employees, we have about 13% back in the office on any given day. So I think that just tells you the magnitude of how we're operating. And actually, we're doing fine so far. Uncertainty, I mean, I think it was Professor mentioned at the beginning, the way we educate people and what's been our approach, which has been a very linear and deterministic approach. I think in these times where we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, where complexity is the predominant factor, I think we need to reassess the way we look at problems, and we need to understand in what kind of environment we are. In many ways, those linear or deterministic ways don't help, but scenarios and in the more scenario-based approach will be much more solution-oriented. But that's not what we used to do. So we're still planning our financials for the next 2 years, and I keep telling them, well, your guess is as good as mine, you can write down any number. We rather go into shorter cycles, but we're still used to that. And if we don't do it, we feel we lost control. And I think giving up control is actually a good thing, because it allows you to see through complexity much better. And then I think empathy and everything, I think we are starting to see the effects of globalization disappearing. I think Nichol mentioned that, food access, and I think micro communities being created again rather than a global world. Borders becoming much stricter in any kind of sense, and the economy is becoming more selfish again. I think we're seeing the race for vaccines, all the countries already buying up all the vaccines. So that's just the best way to assess how that's going to go. Obviously, the value of the family and the little community is on the rise. I think that's probably a positive of this, and sticking together as a community, which I think it's very good. Now, consumers, I think obviously we all consumers, we know what matters to us. I think it's been amazing to see how the shift went from offline to online, and how it has worked, how the supply chains in general have worked quite well. Obviously at the beginning was a bit more difficult, but then as we work through, it has become more solid. I think obviously the value to essentials, that's why everyone is stockpiling toilet paper, which seems to be the most essential thing in the world. Something I've never understood, but okay, that's fine. I think the shift to value as well. But at the same time, obviously, if we couldn't find what we wanted, we just took the next best. So loyalty has become very different. I think with essential, loyalty goes down. If you have no choice, then you go back to what you get. And actually, that's a good thing. Honestly, if you ask me, I think going back, you don't need the best, you just need what is there. And I think we have gotten used to having these multiple choices or multi-options, and I think it's no need. So I think that has changed. Digital, obviously, I don't need to talk. I think that's why we're here, and I think it's become more important and will continue. I think this has accelerated the trend, not only in certain parts of society, but I think completely throughout. If you don't have access to digital means, if there's no connectivity, you're out of the society. And I think that's becoming more brutal, and in particular in more developing economies and more remote places, I think that's going to be a huge challenge. And so I think at the same time it's a challenge, but it will also allow for new elements to come up. The health and caring economy, obviously I've spoke briefly about. You can do well-being seminars day in and day out and don't do any work anymore, right? So so that's something that we have seen, and I think that conscious about health and understanding about health has become a very important element of what we do. And actually we do see it is also an opportunity for an insurance company. We've launched recently a well-care unit where we will try to engage with our customers more on an ongoing basis, and not just be there when you have a claim. So see how we can assess you and help to manage your life. And last but not least, the home body economy. I think we're starting to see I mean, something stupid, people making masks at home and selling them, but from really that whole notion of how you work, how is work going to look like in the future, that you don't necessarily need to go to the office to be effective. If that the element of trust that people are producing what they are without being in the office, I think that will be an interesting development, and we'll continue to see that going forward. We've done some research around what we believe millennials are looking after, because obviously that's a big part of the consuming population. And I think we're just starting to see that their lives are not linear anymore. They keep going back and forth between starting a career, going back to school, starting a family, continuing with school, starting a business, going back to having own. So I think it's a very different way. But I think one thing they have all in common is they want transparent, easy to access, and hassle-free propositions. I think that's what it's clear. And the notion of transparency in doing what it says on the tin has become even more important, because the power of information, search costs for information have disappeared. And hence, I think there's no way around that you can fool consumers anymore. I'm not saying that you were doing that in the past, but I think if someone wasn't as truthful as they could be, then that's gone. And I think we all need to adjust to that. So we've done some research, because for us it's a very important element. We have not been very, put differently, this generation is underinsured, and I think that to us is a important factor to consider, because insurance is nothing more. What you do is, when you buy insurance, you transfer your risk from yourself to a community. And insurance companies started as mutual companies, where a group of people came together, bundled their money, and if something happened, they were here for each other. For whatever reason, this generation of people have either not been engaged or don't have that awareness. These are global trends that I'm talking. I'm not talking about specific countries. It may differ. And I think we need to engage them. And so we have identified that there are about 5 territories that matter to them most. And I think it's finding ways to engage with them so they can be insured and have that risk transfer, because the risk transfer is very important for all societies, for governments, companies, and that's, I think, what we're here for. And as long as there's a huge insurance gap, and I think the insurance gap has grown through the crisis, because typically people, when there is a crisis, stop paying for the insurance because they see, well, I have nothing, so why should I pay for it? I think that's the wrong, and that's why education becomes even more important. You may be interested to see how do companies react in recession, because obviously I think we have, and this is research from IND, the business school in Switzerland, where they've done, okay, how do companies come out of recession? I think it's clear that we are in a recession and will be there even for a while. But what do you do? Because, I mean, there are companies come out better than others. And I think what the research shows, and that it's a combination of cutting costs, streamlining your operations, and being very cash conscious on the one hand side, which is the prevention focus, but at the same time, deciding where do you see the future and investing into that. So research shows that companies that have managed that balance between managing their cash and their operations, but still investing into something, are the ones that come out the strongest and come out the best. Now, this is obviously with hindsight. That's what we have seen and what they have seen in the past. If the future is the same, it's to be seen, but I think that it's an important element that you can't, or you shouldn't just be completely shutting yourself off, cutting costs, laying off people, because that will bite you in the future when things go up. And so I think I just wanted to plant this idea here, because you might be interested to think about how will companies come out of this. And I think there will be, as everywhere, companies coming out much stronger. You've seen Apple now going over the 2 trillion barrier as the stock market capitalization, and I think there will be others that come out in the same aspect. So I think it's definitely something to watch and to consider if you're running your own businesses. And Yeah, I think last but not least, I think obviously this whole VUCA discussion, which I think is I think ultimately it's all about leadership, be it at the political level, be it at the community level, be it at the company level, and be it at the individual level. And I think companies that or leaders that lead with a purpose are so much more important. I think we spoke about the trust element beforehand. And why do some countries better than others? And I think it has a lot to do with the trust element. I think I mentioned a few. Take for example Germany, obviously, where we've had a leader that's been there for a very long time, and Germany, I think, has managed very well. I think, broadly speaking, with Angela Merkel, with a lot of compassion, very unemotional, but really not mixing politics with what it is about. Then we've had the UK, very different elements, are still in the middle of the crisis, and well, we'll see what comes out of it. Same is true for the US. We will see what happens with the elections. The other element, which I think is very interesting, is an example of Ireland, right? Ireland, you had the prime minister that had been voted out of office just before the crisis hit, but they couldn't form a new government. So he led the country through the crisis in a very good manner. And I think what is also interesting, that obviously he has done that because he's a GP, right? He's a trained medic. So I think he understood what it took to manage such a crisis. But he didn't have the support of the country, but nevertheless has done tremendously well. So I think it's quite an interesting element to understand why was he able to bridge that. And then I think small countries have done better than big countries in general. I think that's probably fair to say. I think Singapore has done really well. I think Switzerland has done really well. And I'm sure there are other countries which I'm forgetting now that have done really well as well. And I think we have to continue on the path. I think it's not mixing things. I think I just want to reiterate, it's a health crisis, nothing else. It's not the crisis, is not yet a financial crisis, it's a health crisis. And when you mix those things, I think things don't end well. I think unfortunately we've seen in the US, I think we've seen it to a certain extent in Latin America and some of the countries. And I hope that collectively we can come out of that again. And last but not least, I think prioritize the emotional and organizational resilience. We all had to go back and work differently. And I think that required a lot of adjustment to many people, and they were not prepared to do. But I think together, when we talk about these things, you can actually get over it and come out stronger. And that's what I've been telling our people. 2020 will only be a lost year if you're not ready for next year. So let's use this to sharpen our tools, right? To get ready, stand together, think hard. And actually on that, I would like to close. I spend a lot of time just thinking, because I told everyone that we have enough people dealing with the current, so I don't have to deal with that as well. You can keep me informed and up to date, but I think it's really about where do we go from here, which is what matters to me, and that's what I spend on. And with that, I'll hand over back to you, Loretta.
Thank you, Peter. You know, you are my dear friend, so I can say this to your face. You shall be honorary woman, because you lead with so much wisdom and compassion. So,
If you can't.
But, I think.
By the way, have you told Nichol about my chicken rice expertise?
Yes, we should all get together and do this chicken rice thing, when we can.
Yes.
And we have to bring Professor Powdyel together as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Peter, I think you've just reminded us that for decades now, we have favored cost and efficiency over resilience. And I think what we're really seeing now, what all of you have said, that, with this, we're really harkening back to a value system, an ecosystem, an end-to-end value optimization that we just sort of let by the wayside because of our desire to just, generate highest GDP at the lowest cost, at cheapest labor. And I think what all of you are saying is really just this return to value optimization. So on that note too, I just want to ensure that we leave time for Professor Powdyel. Professor Powdyel, is your mic working now, sir? Can you try? Because I think this is a perfect time to return to human. So I would love to hear your words, sir. Can I just unmute your mic right there? Sir, can you try unmuting your mic? If you could just hit the button. Right, perfect. So this is just to get back where we left off. You had written extensively on your post-pandemic thoughts. So would you like to share with us your ideas on the Revolution 5.0, the return of the human? We'd love to hear that. Sir, please go ahead.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm sorry that because of my unstable internet connection, I got cut off.
No, sir, it's
However,
perfect because you are performing why we need to return to human. Technology fails us. So we got your point. It's very well put.
that is also the reason why I don't have any slides. Thank you so much indeed. This is so important. Despite all the pains and the anxiety, the uncertainty, the devastation that we see all around, I also see that there is so much of heartwarming developments taking place all around across the world. This has been a time when it's been a spontaneous manifestation of basic human goodness, goodwill, the spirit of service, volunteerism, human solidarity. The earth has become so much greener. The sky has become that much bluer. The air is that much fresher. Water is that much cleaner. The birds and the animals, the reptiles, vegetation, everything has had time to breathe here now. And humanity has resurfaced, I believe, despite the pandemic, despite the virus, despite the destruction. And I feel that this is an important moment in human history. So far, the GDP modeled development of the world, our societies, our nations, has actually brought us to where we are now. Development was supposed to be human focused. It was supposed to be sustainable development, wholesome development, sustainable development is that. However, somewhere along the line, the rains started beating us. We became more materials conscious, physical commodities conscious, and left behind the humanity of the humans. At this point in time, during the pandemic, what we see is the primacy of life, the preciousness of life. All our big buildings, huge collections in the bank, our properties, they're important, but only so important and not more important than that. All across the world, everybody feels that it is important to live our lives. Life is precious. Life is valuable. And I think it is this awareness, this realization of the preciousness of life, the primacy of life, against the backdrop of a healthy, sustainable, homely planet Earth. I see that there is a re-emergence of the humanity of the humans. I call it Revolution 5.0. We've had so many revolutions in the past. The more recent one being the Digital Revolution 4.0, see. But all these are externals. Now is the time to go inward, to recollect ourselves, to collect our oars and move forward. That's why I feel that it's so very important that before we return to business as usual, before we return to the GDP-based model of development, we have to take care of what we have achieved, what we have regained, and advance it. Otherwise, I see that the exploitative GDP-based model of development, the GDP-based model of progress will not be sustainable. When you talk about the sustainability of the future, the sustainability of life, our planet Earth, I believe we have to reorder our priorities. And the reordering of our priorities takes into account the reaffirmation and reassertion of the primacy of life. Human life and all life forms, human life, plant life, animal life, life in the sea, on land, and in the sky, see. Life in all its multiplicity, see. So the future, if it has to be sustainable, has got to take into account the fact that we humans are only a small microcosm in the big macrocosm of the universe, that we are just a guest. in um, in the long journeys of life. So that's why I feel that before before we are able to return to what was the old normal, before life becomes again normal as usual, life returns to business as usual. Before that happens, I believe we have to strengthen, revitalize, and reassert the gains that were made in these painful times. I feel that the unstable, unsustainable, utilitarian GDP model is not going to serve life as it ought to see. That's why His Majesty the Fourth King of Bhutan propounded the idea of gross national happiness, supposed to be much more broad-based, taking into account also the claim of other elements which are vital to life, the claim of planet Earth, the claim of Mother Nature, the claim of the air that we breathe, the claim of water that we drink, the claim of vegetation that gives us oxygen for us to live our lives. So the claim of planet Earth, the claim of culture, the claim of society, the claim of good governance. So these four pillars support the architecture of gross national happiness, whereas GDP has only one pillar, and a house that is founded only on one pillar will not be sustainable, and that is the economic pillar, the commodity based pillar, the physical pillar. See, that will not that will not hold the house in order for the future or for an extended period of time. That's why I feel that it's important to look at development from an alternative perspective. We hope that the pandemic will end soon. And when the pandemic ends and we are able to move forward, it should not be a return to business as usual. It should be a return to a position, to a future that will be based on the beautiful gains, the human element, the blessings of Mother Nature, the blessings of all the elements of this planet Earth. I think that is so very important. I feel the return of the human revolution 5.0 has got to be affirmed, it's got to be asserted, it's got to be advanced. Otherwise, the world is going to go the same way, unsustainable, exploitative, and finite. I think there is so much that the pandemic has taught us. We need to be humbler. We need to be much more listening. We need to be much more feeling and much more seeing. And I think that is what I feel, despite the pains and the anxiety that COVID-19 has brought about, it has also opened a new frontier, the human frontier, the re-emergence of the basic goodness of humanity against a much more healthy and sustainable planet Earth, Mother Nature.
Thank you, sir.
5.0. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You know, I always try to read a poem at the end of our panel, and I am going to take that poem away completely because you're just so erudite, and you know, you just speak poetry and verse, just comes right from your heart, and it's the words that I think we need to hear. And every time, I think Nichol can bear testament to that. I think anytime we feel a little lost, I think Nichol and I say that we go back to Bhutan because it feels like a spiritual home and a reawakening of the senses and getting our true north. Every time we feel we're a little bit off kilter, we go back to Bhutan to come back for our true north. So thank you for that. And at this point, I'm mindful of time. I would like to open the floor now to all our questions. I have been noticing that the chat room is rife with lots of comments and questions. So I'd like to hand it over right now to our able moderator. Eunice, can you please take it away for our Q&A? Thank you.
Thanks, Loretta. There's not much to say, actually. I was so immersed with everything that I was listening to, even shed a little tear here and there because of that. A big thank you to all our panelists, a lot of learning and a lot of food for thought. And we would like to open the floor for questions. You can raise them to our panelists, and if you wish to remain anonymous, you can also share your questions in our chat room. But I'd like to begin with Professor Powdyel. If I may, we'd just like to hear some more about the Green School. You know, in the Philippines before, the education is on the area of holistic education, meaning students in the earlier part of their lives are taught how to plant, how to do housekeeping, maintain the surroundings and all that. But eventually, here comes the digital age, and I think they're more adept into anything on technology based. No? So I'd like to know, how can we go back to that idea of a green school? A lot of the listeners now from the Philippines are actually educators in the basic education program of the country. Professor Powdyel?
Thank you, and I would like to welcome my fellow educators and students with whom I have spent all my life. Green, of course, is a primary color, but in this case, green is not only a color, but it is a metaphor. It is a metaphor for life. Green is life. And by life, we mean all life forms: human life, animal life, plant life, birds. As I said earlier on, life in all the realms, the sea, land, and air. So life in all its infinite variety is subsumed in green. So anything and everything that supports and sustains life in its multiplicity is green. So we can have a green school, we can have a green home, we can have green economy, green politics, green parliament, green legislation, green diplomacy, green homes, green nations, and a green world. Why not? Green is something that supports life. Today, of course, education is basically unidimensional, unfortunately. We have built, we have, we have invested meaning and purpose in education. That is why we have built our schools, colleges, and universities all around the world and collected in them the most precious segment of our population, our children, young boys and girls, men and women, and kept them there or keep them there for extended periods of time. If we keep so many young people, the largest number of people anywhere in the world are in our institutions of learning, schools, colleges, and universities, and they are our future. That is why their educational experience ought to be much more purposeful. It has got to have integrity. It has to have meaning and power. So far, by and large, we have actually invested a lot of resources in sharpening the mind and skills, which are important. At the end of the day, our young people would have to have a gainful employment, but there's more to it than that. If it's only to find jobs, we do not need to set up these huge establishments, our schools, colleges, and universities. People will find a job anyway.
Yep.
But when young people come to our schools and institutions, they have to find a bigger purpose. And when we set up a school and collect young people in our schools and in institutions, we have to cater to the diverse elements, the diverse dimensions that make them who they are. We are not only intellectual beings, we have this huge environmental, natural element. So in my green school, there are 8 elements. These 8 elements are like the 8 big claims on education systems and on practitioners of education. These claims are the claim of Mother Nature, claim of planet Earth. So the first element of a green school is natural or environmental greenery. The second claim is that of the society, social greenery. The third claim is that of culture, cultural greenery. The fourth element is that of the mind, the intellect. We have intellectual greenery. And the next one is academic greenery, our different subjects that we include in the curriculum, academic greenery. The next claim is aesthetic greenery, aesthetics, so very important, especially today because aesthetics has got to do with the appreciation of what is beautiful and graceful and tasteful. And today, thanks to technology, there are images and the impulses that come onto the screen and that often suck the soul out of our children without their ever knowing that. That's why it's important to build and strengthen the aesthetic sensibilities of our children. Maybe be music, painting, the arts, literature, poetry, work in the gardens, appreciate the beauty of nature, the sights and the sounds and the smells of Mother Nature. The next element is the seventh element is spiritual greenery. Spirituality has got nothing to do with religion or religiosity. Spirituality is far deeper and profounder than religion or religiosity. So spirituality has got to do with the need to tend towards what is better than us, what is superior to us, what is more complete and holistic than us. Just as a flower kept by the windowsill has the tendency to look towards the sun for nourishment. So also our educational experience should have, our children's educational experience should have those impulses, those values that will make them aim for higher, aim for better, aim for a greater, sublimer way of life. The final element is the claim of morality or ethics. Today we do not talk about morality or ethics in education. People feel that it is not politically correct to talk about ethics. But ethics is so fundamental. In some way or the other, at the end of the day, we are all ethical beings. So ethics has got to do with our ability to distinguish between categories of values. And what are these values? As human beings, the most highly evolved of all the species, as the Homo sapiens, thinking beings, we have this ability to distinguish between right and wrong, between good and bad, between truth and falsehood. Only we human beings have this ability. Good as opposed to bad, or evil, right as opposed to wrong, truth as opposed to falsehood or untruth. Young people who are exposed to these values will become graduates, will become leaders later when they pass out of schools, institutions of learning, and join the larger society. They will become leaders who will have the strength of character. They'll be able to say, this is right, that is wrong. I am not for it, I am for that. But we need strong leaders. We need strong public figures. And if our institutions have the ability to produce such individuals, our societies, our nations, and our world will be that much better. That is my green school. 8 elements, 8 claims, not just one claim, the intellectual claim.
We will remember the 8 elements of your green school. And taking off from the word strong leadership, I'd like to ask one strong leader from our panelists as well. Peter, just very interesting to note perhaps if you can shed the light on, can the insurance model be used to cover the pandemic? Is that possible?
I think the insurance industry, together with governments and associations, is trying to come up with risk transfers that will allow for a cover of certain elements. I think the question is always is what do you cover? Do you cover the human side of things, which I think is fairly straightforward and is covered in many cases, or do you go beyond that and think about business interruption to whatever? I think it's as always like that. I think the industry is working hard together with governments and associations to do so. I think we're starting to see some new models, and definitely I think there will be ways to address that. I think it's a bit early. I think we're still in the midst of it. We don't really know the knock-on effects and whatever, but I think a collective solution is the way out rather than an individualistic and egoistic solution. I think that's what has to happen.
Thank you, Peter. I would remember what you said a while ago, that it's still a priority of a health issue rather than anything else, right?
Yes.
Thank you. For Nichol, what's going to happen? What is the outlook now that there is this decoupling of US and China? How is that going to affect the future of the business as you look at it? in terms of environment, social, and corporate governance? Or perhaps let us localize it in your industry. How will this situation now between China and the way things are happening in Hong Kong and all of this? How would that affect you? China being
If I could just jump in, Peter, I'd like you to take that on as well. So, yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's for me now, the difficult one, right?
yeah. So Nicole and Peter, please. Nicole first, please.
I think being a tiny island state, we have to play our cards very carefully, even from a business or just a food perspective. It's not just the iPhone that's intertwined at the back, right? Branded on the front as American, but the parts are China. A lot of the food products as well, that even if you buy or import from the US or any other countries, a lot of them originate from China and other things. So it gets very complicated when both parties are not working as well together. But the other thing that I see quite interestingly is how is Singapore going to play up our position in this in the world? And I'm not just talking about even for business, even for the food bank, right? So basically, GFN or the Global Food Banking Network is looking for a regional headquarters in Asia. And so, you know, would there be a tussle between like Hong Kong and Singapore? Because, you know, Hong Kong started their food banking 2 years before Singapore did. So before this political instability, I would say Hong Kong would be a great choice because they were the early runners in this game and things like that. But because of the current situation, some people may be forced, and I've known of some companies already that had to move or set up shop in Singapore to find a more neutral play. So whether that will open up more doors, for sure, since this panel is about sustainability, I have got a lot of indoor farms that's opening in Singapore. So if any of you are buying shares out there, right? So please buy some indoor farming shares. There are a lot of large companies that are opening up in Singapore to make Singapore the hub for indoor farming in the entire world. So if they can make it successful here, they can then ship their vegetables all around the region, even for countries that already have agricultural infrastructure there. But it's a very interesting time now, and I'm actually very, very excited about what 2021 would bring.
Thanks, Nicole.
Yeah.
Okay. I think there's no decoupling. The two economies are so interlinked, and businesses are pragmatic in the end. And actually, you have two leaders that, okay, you have on the one side the Chinese, which is a very pragmatic leader and doesn't really get provoked, but what Mr. Trump says to say on the other side. And Mr. Trump, on the other hand, I think he's the businessman, and he's not dogmatic or anything. He goes transaction by transaction. And I think ultimately that's what it will happen. It's a lot of noise, and I think it will be fine. I think we have an advantage that China is strong. I think while they're strong, they're handling Hong Kong maybe a bit more relaxed than they would have done a few years ago. And I think they're not going in full steam as they would have done. And I think we'll have to see how it played out. Singapore is a smart country, knows how to deal with that tension between those two players, and will continue to do so. I think with the continuity of the leadership, I don't see any issues with that. It's not a straight line. There will be hiccups, ups and downs, but ultimately it's so interlinked, and it's only lose-lose. So they know they don't want that, and we will see the noise, and it will be fine, and we'll have to deal with that. And my good friend Kishore Mahbubani, I think if you want to read about the tensions between China and the US, or Asia and the US, I think it's a good read. And he publishes a lot around that, so I recommend some of his readings, which are very politically correct, but I think there's a lot of truth in them.
Thank you, Peter. Before I turn you over back to Loretta for our closing, I'd like to share some takeaways, the 3 takeaways that I can get from this talk this afternoon. From Nicole, food is not just about feeding the stomach, but it's all about feeding the mind as well, the emotion, the social realities of our life. From Peter, I've learned empathy is everything. empathy is everything. And of course, from Professor Powdyel, it's still the primacy of life above everything else. So back to you, Loretta.
Thank you so much. I mean, today was truly a lot of learning. We usually end promptly, but today I'm just going to make an exception if you don't mind. For those of you who need to leave, if you could just leave quietly, but if you could just wait. I actually saw one hand raised, and I would really like to take the question. Sir, Thomas Kwan, could you please unmute your mic? I saw you raise your hand, sir. Please go ahead, raise your question.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I just want to add on to what Nichols mentioned about in-house or indoor farm. What we are doing in Singapore is that we have this, can you see this? Our national park, right? Our national park is giving free seeds, vegetable seeds to all householders so that we can grow it in our housing park flat. And for people like myself, from University of Zurich, where we have 4,000 senior members, I'm also encouraging them to grow their own vegetable in their own house so that we can be self-sustained. We do not have to depend on other countries. Thank you.
Thanks, Thomas.
Thank you so much, Uncle. That was just such a wonderful way to end. You know, in the US, when we receive seeds in the mail, people get terrified. But, you know, it's just now in the US. Thank you so much, Uncle, for bringing that up. I almost wish that I'm back home now to receive those seeds and plant them, and the seeds of wisdom and love. And thank you so much, sir. Thank you. And at this point, I'll just like to return us to our slides. If you just could bear with me. This has been a really exciting evening. You know, I don't think I'll be able to sleep. I know there's some of my Hawaiian friends here. Thank you for still being here with us, but it truly is such an exciting conversation. I had to just keep going. So I wish to thank all of you for joining us today. For those of you who still wish to discuss some ideas, please do. I'll still be here. I'm not going to sleep. I'm so wired now. If our panelists can stay and take some questions, great. But otherwise, I won't hold you to it. I understand that the commitment was 90 minutes. So thank you. And Eunice, if you'd just like to share some of the comments.
Yeah, if you can please log on to our site, that's www.futureskills101.com, our social media pages, or better yet, leave us an email. Kindly watch out for our next edition of this webinar, which will happen on September 19, 18 for the other parts of the world. It's on the future of knowledge. And you can also participate in Future Skills 101 by becoming a content creator and instructor, or by just sponsoring one of our communities of need. You know, Future Skills 101 is entirely self-funded, so your generous support will make a huge difference to be able to reach out to the other communities we work with.
That's right. And like I said, you know, I scraped my poem because after hearing Professor Powdyel, you know, I can't possibly top that. So as part of our formal closing, I would just like to leave you with the words of cultural anthropologist Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Till then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Stay connected, because social distancing is not being socially distant. I thank you for your time. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the insights.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If anyone here just wants to raise a question still, go ahead. Let me stop share for a while. Is there anyone that has a question? Yes, sir. Yes, Professor.
When I was talking about the things that we have seen emerge, I had in my mind also the kind of work that Ms. Nichol is doing, providing food. And all over the world, we have seen people leaving food outside their homes for people in need to come and collect and take that food. Because I believe that so many people not only fed but nourished by the kind of work that individuals like Mem Nichol have been doing. I believe that food is twice blessed Food is twice blessed in the sense that it blesses those who give as well as those who receive. And by taking the food, the gift that people get, they not only nourish their bodies, but they bless themselves. So to people like Ma'am Nicole and everybody else in the world who has been generating so much of positive energy, and for reinforcing my belief in the return of humanity, I would like to say thank you. And please keep up the good work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions? I mean, you know, this is what I really enjoy about our panels is that people actually just hang out in the room, and I feel like we have a sense of community. And are there any questions, any thoughts? I mean, I won't hold you both to it, Nicole and Professor, because I know we asked you to be here for 90 minutes, and this is way past 90 minutes. But if you're happy to take questions, is there anyone that wants to ask any other questions, or no? Anyone here that wants to ask? I'm just going around. Is there anyone else? No? But otherwise, well, thank you all so much. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thanks,
all right. So,
Professor Powdyel.
Thank you so much.
And I hope that we'll be able to have you back again for a fuller session.
Yes.
On the green school sustainability, return of human, as well as on food insecurity and sustainability as well. All right, well, thank you, everybody. And I wish you all a good night. If there are no other questions, then oh, Nicole has actually left her email there. She's very gracious. If anyone wants to reach out to Nicole, she's left her email in the chat. So please go ahead and take a snapshot of her email, and you can keep in touch with her, the good work that she's doing. And if you'd like to donate some food or help out in her food bank, please go ahead as well. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody. You know, this is one of those rooms that's so hard to leave because usually everyone just gets out of a Zoom room, but you guys are just all here. So thank you all. Thank you all. Good night. If there are no questions, then I'll bid you all good night. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we're still going to hang out here, but no questions. Then thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Professor
Powdyel.
Hi.
Teachers from the Philippines, especially from the Department of Education.
Yes, yes. Oh, we should have taken a group photo, but Veronica, did you take photos of us? You did, yeah? Oh, okay, good. All right. Thank you. No questions from anyone? I mean, this is a great time to ask. The professor's still here. There's still many people in the room. This usually doesn't happen because usually people just leave the Zoom room. Any questions at all? No, I'm looking around. No. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll bid good night to all of you then. Good night. Good night, sir. I'll be in touch with you through email.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you. Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much to the panelists from the Philippines.
Cardinal. Thank you so much, Cardinal.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm so glad that we got you to come back online. Yeah. So it's perfect that we got to hear your comments. That was very inspiring. I think everybody said that they needed to hear that in these times. So thank you.
Hi.
I wasn't very coherent because I got a bit unsettled by the failure of the system.
But I think it proved your point beautifully. I think, you know, there couldn't have been a better way to put why we had to return to humanity and right, be weaned off technology sometimes and just be reminded what it's like to just be human, get back to essential. Yeah.
Being lost a while ago, Professor Powdyel, was a great segue to regaining the humans.
I think we are too.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you all, everybody. Thank you and good night. Good night, guys.
And
good night.
17.
Good night. Good night. Bye. Good night. Good night.
Bye, Amelia.
Bye. Bye. So should I?
You can turn it off and then we'll go back.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody.